Hi, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Bill.
We are the Breast Bling team, selling beaded and stainless steel chain jewelry, highlighting and fitness and women's competition pieces. I can even custom just for you. Check us out
at BrentsBling.com.
Happy New Year, everyone. It is 2023, and this is Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, joined by Chris the Technician Aceto, all the way from South Beach, Florida, enjoying the sun. Chris, I'm sure you're not that happy that you're going back today to cold Maine.
Well, it's my 22nd wedding anniversary, Dave, so you can wish me,
happy.
And I'm here in South Florida working on my tents. When I go back to where I live in my Section 8 housing project, that the people in the peanut gallery don't say that I'm dying from something.
That's right.
I'm trying to get a tan.
I had to gain back some weight in the gym just so people would say I wasn't dying, but they'll probably still say it. So.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, "Are you getting back on stage?" I'm like, "No," I said, "I'm." You know me. I go through these weights. People don't understand. Like most people, when they don't work out, what happens, Chris?
They get fat.
Yeah, they get fat. They just because they keep eating and they just get fat. I just
disappear.
I disappear. I'm always shredded. I just lose size. I
Dave,
mean,
let me say, if you had the motivation, which you do not, and if you had the time, which you do not, you could do like a 12-week transformation for your species that people would say oh, he morphed those pictures.
Right.
But you need to have time, you need to have motivation, which those two things that you don't have, and I don't know what else you need.
You know what the funny thing is, Chris? You look at yourself in the mirror when you get out of the shower, right? And my conditioning level is exactly the same as it was 15 pounds ago, but I'm just bigger. So I mean, I'm shredded. I mean, I'm like baffled, and you morph. I have such a dysmorphia because I look in the mirror and I'm like, actually, I look pretty big. So I'll snap a picture and I'm like, I look terrible. I'm not big. I'm certainly not big. I'm bigger than I was, but
Well, how's your condition? How would it be in like a nationals lineup?
I'm the most conditioned person on stage for sure right now.
Yeah. No, you got strided everything. Strided quads.
I don't know if I don't produce fat cells anymore or something like that. Something definitely is going on with the lack of fat tissue in my body. I've been to surgeons that actually even the foot surgeon said, I said, "Are you going to do?" He's like, "Yeah, we're going to put some stem cells in your foot when we do the surgery, the fusion. It helps heal everything." And he's big into that. I said, where are you going to pull them from? He goes, "Well, I'm going to go into your hip." I said, I thought they use fat. They use the fat cells. He goes, "You don't have any fat cells."
Yeah.
He's like, no, I said, "Well, yeah, I know I'm low body." No, he goes, "You have no fats. I've already tried." He goes, "You have I couldn't extract anything. Nothing came out." He goes, "Of your lower back, which is where men hold their fat." He said, "You have zero fat." He goes, "I've never seen anything like it," but he goes, "You have zero fat cells."
You need a donor. You have a Christmas tree. Tell me, you don't have any, nothing.
No, they were making fun of Hadi Chupin's lack of Christmas tree this year, but
is that what people making fun of? Well, you saw the picture. Maybe I posted the picture of Rafael Brandao backstage, and then a picture he looked like a butterball on stage.
Yeah,
and that's just because the lighting is not lit in any remote way whatsoever for a bodybuilding competition. We talked about it.
What do you think it was lit for? Sometimes, Chris, in the past they always said, we light the stage for TV. That was always their excuse why it wasn't so great. What was the excuse this year? Because it wasn't good for TV either.
Yeah, well, I think we said it last week. They're well, I know what's happening is they're wrapped up with the idea of they need to make a production, and the production is the show. The thing with the bodybuilding fans is they could care less about lighting. Only if it's poor, that's when they could care. So you don't need techno music. You don't need strobe lighting. And yes, I know there was no strobe lighting, so don't call me out on it, promoters. But you don't need the lighting, going up, down, left, right, side, backwards, forwards. the spectacle, the entertainment, and what people pay for is the men's open prejudging.
Right.
And classic, I would say, and 212. I mean, there's a hierarchy of what people want to see.
Well, there's people's families who buy the bikini too, but no, they had a screen. They had that LED screen, that humongous LED screen behind the competitors, which probably cost a fortune, by the way, to set that thing up. I have to believe it was very expensive. Looked great probably when you walked into the auditorium there and you sat down, but probably in practicality, it's really not that good. Now the sponsors probably like it because you can see them, but it definitely distracts. Like my eyes will go to wherever the fanfare is, so to speak, and it takes it away from the athletes. I think that's really what people are not saying. It didn't look good. People are just saying it took away from what we were trying to see on stage with the athletes and make the distinctions between who looks better. And I think that's because we all know the cameras pick up light. So when they first started the webcast, Chris, they must have had the camera on auto, which was picking up the background light as ideal, and then the competitors were looking dark. So I texted Dan, or I think I had King Kamali text Dan, and he fixed that. But that's just the way it is. You can't have super bright lights behind these guys.
Yeah. So I mean, lessons learned. I think next year going forward,
they'll fix it.
Gripes, that they won't have the show at 3 a.m. New York time or Miami time.
Yeah.
And they'll have a different way of lighting the show to highlight, what everyone's there for. You could have a barren stage with nothing on it,
right? And
just perfect lighting, and people will be talking about the show for 6 weeks, 7, 8 weeks after the fact. That what a crazy show it was. Because now I'm hearing from people, week lineup. I'm like, week lineup? We're talking about it being crazy lineup, and now people, because I think that's a minority, but people focusing on pictures,
right?
Or even video does not really project, the level of physiques and competition that were on stage, which was, collectively phenomenal.
Did Chris, did the wheelchair guys go on after the men? It's prejudging that really late.
Dave, people think that the picture that I posted me sleeping was like a joke. It wasn't. I'd fallen asleep because I was waiting for so I don't know the order. I don't know if I slept with the prejudging of the wheelchair.
No. In other words, once the men came on, I think after the men went over, which ended 3 a.m. our time, New York time, which was 12 midnight your time, I think the wheelchair guys had to go after that. And I understand they rushed them a little bit, but so I think they were upset about that. But and to make those guys wait around is probably not the best thing too. I mean, they have special needs. I heard the bathroom facilities weren't good there for them. I don't know. It was, that's just what I'm reading. But it obviously they got to spread it out over 3 days. I think that would probably. Well, you know what? They did solve one of the problems. The qualifier system has been changed, so you have to either place top 5 at the Olympia if you're in the men's open, top 3 in the other classes, qualify, and then you have to win a show. So you can't. There's none of this point system anymore, which should reduce people down. And obviously the season is a little shorter now because the Olympia is going to be the first week in November. So the last qualifier is the end of October. So you're not going to have as many shows to qualify. So I think we're going to have a smaller lineup next year.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the big lineup. The biggest show of the year. There's. I mean, look at some of the people who didn't place in the top 10. Phenomenal bodybuilders who have won shows. They didn't get their own points. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of phenomenal bodybuilders who won shows. They didn't get their own points, and they placed outside the top 10. So the idea, that, we have to whittle down the size of the open lineup. I'm critical of that too. I think it should be, have as many good guys in it as possible.
Yeah, but if you can't place top 15, Chris, at the Olympia, why would you want it? Why would we as fans want them to be there? Aside from the fact that they can say, I made the Olympia,
Because some of the people who didn't place top 15, go through the names, Dave. Their names that have placed 6, their names that have placed top 10.
Well, they didn't come in shape. That's their fault, Here's
the point, Dave. Here's the greater point. Could we please stop bending over for the other divisions? If it wasn't for the men's open bodybuilding, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't even have a weekend. So this idea of 35 guys or 30 guys or whatever it is too many. No, I think like 68 classic guys is too many, which I love the classic division. I think 120, bikini girls is too many.
Well, you got to get. I think all the divisions got to be knocked down. You know what? It's not fair to the promoter too, because look, if the promoter of the Olympia says, "Look, I'm going to fly in the people who qualify and put them in hotels," I don't care how wealthy Jake Wood is. There's no reason why he should, lose money on the show having to put up 30 people in a class. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Dave, the reason going back to, because I come through bodybuilding and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
The reason people who didn't place top 15, Akeem, Antoine, Ian Valier was, outside top 10. Crizzo was outside top 10. Those 4 names that I mentioned there with fine tweaks at their all-time best,
Yeah.
and the guys who came above them a little bit off, they would easily be 7th and 8th. And they're not top 15. That's the reason why you invite more
but those guys will win shows, Chris, in the during the year, and they'll qualify. The only proviso that maybe, and this they're not doing this, is if, let's say, a guy like Ian Valier wins 3 shows, he takes 2 more qualification spots away from 2 people that could have gotten it, and they will not go to the second place person. That's the rule. So
I think in that case, they'll go to the second place person. I think that, someone can be dominant one year, win 3, and then win, and they can win the second and third show by this, skin of their teeth, right? And barely sneak in, and barely beat out the 2 other guys who are obviously.
Here's the issue, Chris. What's going to happen is if someone is really close, like you just said, you know what they're going to do? They're going to give it to the other guy so the other guy can get the qualification spot, which might not be cool because the guy who might deserve to win, who just won the week before, but now they're like, wow, we want to get the other guy qualification spot.
Then you're fiddling with your own system.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think they should go to the second place person if the first place person is qualified already.
Me too.
Because just to prevent this other scenario from happening, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to have Ian Valier. You're going to have him going against Steve Kukla or something like that. They're not going to, and if it's really close where we're like, all right, let's flip a coin. It's not, what's invariably going to happen is the next week when they compete, the other guy's going to win because these judges they're bodybuilding fans. They want to see both guys on stage, right? On the Olympia stage. So I think they should reconsider the second place thing. But usually on the New Year's show, we always do like a year in review, although it's after New Year's. We should have done that last week. And I don't even want to do that because I don't want to go back and just look at everything that already happened already. I think we should look forward into 2023 and really see, what's the excitement, that we're going to be seeing here. Obviously, we get the Arnold Classic coming up in 8 weeks now?
Yeah, right around the corner. I think
is this going to be a weak lineup, Chris, you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of people need a rest. So I think it's going to be a weak lineup. Raphael wanted to do it, was thinking about doing it, on the fence to do it. He's not doing it. That's just one person.
Yeah.
But, probably people who are outside the top 10 will do it. Maybe a couple people, inside, the hierarchy of the elite top 10 in terms of placings at the Olympia. But it just, it's doable by a lot of people, but just, by the time you get to the Olympia, you're so gassed out.
Yeah.
You're just so at the end of the line in terms of I just really need to get the show almost over with. You want to do your best. In many cases, people want to win or crack the top 5. But by the time the show rolls around, you just beat. And to say, okay, I'm going to take a week off and then hit 7 more. It's just, it's a hard turnaround.
Samson Dowd has committed to doing it. He could be a potential guy who wins the show. Yeah,
he's probably the odds-on favorite. It's remarkable. I don't know if you remember, Dave, when he first came out last year, and he was much smaller last year at the Arnold. I was like, gosh, he might win. And I, taking a good look, I was, bamboozled with the first impression, just like stand and relax, frontal bicep, which is outrageous, side chest. But, he's made a lot of improvements since the Arnold to the Olympia, a lot of improvements. So,
is it a mistake, though, to put him into this show, or do you think it's a good move?
great move because he needs if he gets the win, he's going to be pushed hard if he looks improved again for the Olympia to win that show.
Can he do that though? Is this a hard, double to do this year because the Arnold is so close to the Olympia? And then, really, I mean, think about it. If he does the Arnold and then he shuts it down a little bit, he's got to give his body a break at some point. I mean, after that show, how many months does he really have left? Let's say he gives himself April a rest, and then so he's got May, June, July, August, September, October. So he's got 6 months to get ready, and he's got to make improvements. You know what I mean, from last year.
Well, that's the problem is I agree with you, but that's for people who have something to lose. Like Hadi would have something to lose. Derek has something to lose. Ramy has something to lose by doing the Arnold. What they have to lose is they might not win it. Let's say, for example, who else is in that group? Brandon have something to lose, or they might get beat by someone like a Samson.
Right.
Someone, and then it takes away from their, their trajectory, their excitement and their hype running into the Olympia. With Samson, it's just a confirmation of what we've already seen. And then if he wins decisively, the hype going into the Olympia is this guy's top 3.
Right. I would think that Brandon, coming off that, lackluster Olympia, would want to jump into this Arnold. He won it last year. It's a nice paycheck. He's not 25 years old. He's not 32 years old. He's older. He's approaching 40. He might even be 40. I don't know. And you would think he'd want to, shut this down and get people back thinking, hey, I am great. I just kind of mistimed some carving up here, and now I'm bringing the conditioning I should have brought to the Olympia, and I'm going to seal this deal. Because if he doesn't do that in people's minds, I think people start discounting him a little bit, and that includes the judges.
I agree with you 100%. He has nothing to lose and only something to gain by doing the show.
And let's face it, Chris. Let's be honest here. Brandon is not making any significant muscle gains at his age. At this point, it's quality improvements, right? It's still more detail. He's not going to grow his legs 2 inches, even though people would love to see that. It's just not going to happen. I don't care what people. He can come in a little fuller, and it'll look like they're 2 inches bigger, but it's not going to be real muscle. So at this point, I would try to get as much mileage out of his physique as I can get, because he's probably got a limited amount of years left.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if he doesn't, throw his hat in the show. Him, Samson, you probably see like Crizzo.
I would do it if I were Bonac too. Bonac's got to be fuming, man.
Bonac's got something to prove and nothing to lose because he got 9, right? So people writing him off, which, you can't write off a guy who's been top 5 in every pro show for the last that he's done essentially in the last how many years? He just had a bad showing. So
he could win that Arnold easily. And that would give him a huge momentum push, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he doesn't do it. So maybe the lineup will be, powerhouse lineup. Obviously Hadi's not going to do it. Obviously, Derek's not going to do it.
No.
On second, third. Ramy's obviously not going to do it, but there's people. There's still a lot of good bodybuilders around. We talked about the start of the show. There's 35 great guys in the Olympia. How many? 36, 34, whatever the lineup was. All those guys plus, other guys might, want to get going to the show. Make it for a good show. It's so close. It's ridiculous. 7 weeks out.
It's crazy, right? When you think about it, I don't think we've ever had it this close. Although the one year when Nick Walker won it and they moved, remember they had the Arnold, that was that COVID year. They had it in like September. Aside from that, we've never seen, and then they went and had it in March again. So we've never seen it, that close before. And so it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, and once I think they're going to announce the official competitor list at the end of the week. I think it's on Friday. They're doing that. So obviously guys have made their commitments. Maybe they just haven't made it out loud yet. We'll find out exactly who's going. I think it's a good opportunity for some of these dark horse guys, to jump in. Why not throw Crizzo into? If I were Crizzo, I'd do it.
Yeah, audience would love him. He's huge.
Yeah.
it's probably something. I mean, he's got 000 to lose. Like Bonak's got nothing to lose. Grizzle's got completely nothing to lose. You know, everything to gain.
Yeah. You remember when D'Amelia, your buddy, used to? Remember when D'Amelia, your buddy, used to promote the Night of Champions?
Yeah.
And he would always bill it as something. Like he would always find some some freak from Europe no one heard of. And
that's because Dave, I was the greatest promoter after P.T. Barnum.
No, I got to give him credit. He did a good job. I think the Arnold people have to pull that angle. I think they have to find some big freaky guys, maybe like a Crizzo, Samson Dowda, who's the next coming. They got to really build this thing up and get people excited about it, because they're not going to get the Olympia lineup because it was too close to the Olympia, and that's not their fault. That's just a timing issue because they held the Olympia so late this year. But they're going to get good guys, but they have to build. They have like Joe Weider told you that one time. I make the champions.
Yes,
he doesn't care. Right? He didn't care that Vince McMahon stole Stridham and those guys. He's like, I'll make new champions,
Yeah. Without me, they're nothing.
But there's always new talent. I mean, let's build the new talent. I mean, there's some big freaky guys that were really good at the Olympia that didn't make the top 10. And you know what? I'd like to see them in this show. I'd like to see Ian Valier do that show.
Yeah, he's got nothing to lose.
What does he got to right? He made a terrible showing, and I'm sure it's driving him crazy to have to wait all the way to next year. This is a perfect opportunity to redeem himself,
Yeah. Well, there's it's always difficult when you have a bad showing, because it's you have the bad showing, and usually you can figure out after the show why you had the bad showing. The problem is you have to wait to redeem yourself, and the double problem is you get closer to the show trying to redeem yourself. You enter that last 3 weeks of self-doubt. You know what I mean? Like if you've hit it almost every time, and now in the big show you missed it, you're trying to figure out, gosh, what if I, because everything you did for that show where you quote missed it didn't work, where it worked in the past. So you go in that horrible hyper state of anxiety where the last 2 or 3 weeks is like, okay, I've had this formula, I've used this formula, I've tweaked this formula. It's always worked for me. This time it didn't work. So who's to say if I use that formula again or something close to that formula, it's not going to backfire again?
True. Very true. It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what the list is. I think that the Arnold could become everyone's like, oh, it's going to be a terrible show. I don't agree. You know why? Because sometimes when you get the guys that are like just below the top 6, at the Olympia, jumping in the show, which I think we're going to see a lot of those guys because they're going to have like bad taste in their mouth from not placing at the Olympia. And they work extra hard and they all show up in shape. You get this like top 6 at the Arnold all of a sudden that maybe is not the Olympia top 6, but the guys are all freaky shredded and close to each other. And that's what makes an exciting show. I don't have to see all the superstars on stage to enjoy a show. We've gone to shows where we thought the lineups weren't even going to be that good, and everyone was crazy, shredded. We had a couple of new guys that we didn't expect and became superstars, and that's what makes a good show. The Arnold has never been the Olympia lineup because Mr. Olympia very rarely does the Arnold. It's always been like, who's going to be the next big guy coming up, and that's how they have to build that show.
Yeah. Well, all they need to do at the end of the day is get the lighting perfect. And we'll be talking about the show for the rest of the year.
If they do that, then everyone will say, "Oh, the Arnold lighting is so good there." So this is a perfect opportunity.
Who did the Arnold? Yeah.
But they're notorious for doing the LED. Everyone wants to do LEDs in the back, and it's great if you have like Dancing with the Stars. It's terrible if you're trying to judge a bodybuilding show based on the critique of a physique and the way the nuances of the muscle look, and so. It doesn't work for bodybuilding. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, Dave, I can imagine like if you and I would have a bodybuilding show in Florida, and we called up 10 lighting companies. I'm not just 20 lighting companies. If we're having a bodybuilding show, we're giving $1 million first prize, and we want you to light the show. No one would ask us, "What do you need? What do you need?" To tell us what we are going to do. We're going to make the greatest. We did we used to do the Van Halen concerts back in the day. Right. We'd get what we get, which is,
what I would want is
it's an over effort. It's an over effort.
Right. They're doing too much. I want to get my son to draw with a magic marker, a black magic marker on a big piece of white cloth. And that's what I want to hang behind everyone. You don't need anything fancy. You really don't. I mean, the Iron Man was notorious for that, for just putting a black curtain behind everyone. And I'm not saying you need to have a black curtain, but a neutral background, especially for prejudging, you need that.
You know what's so funny? We've become part of the peanut gallery. The peanut gallery says, like, so-and-so, all he needs to do is come in tighter, is, no carb up, no diuretics, just do this. Don't cut your salt. People always, here we are critical of the Olympia lighting. All they need to do is black backdrop and one light bulb.
Yeah. It worked. In the 90s, there was good lighting. It worked, and they had nothing. They had no technical anything. The lights, I remember, Chris, I didn't promote shows, but I went to a show once, guest posing, and I remember them just trying to set the lights up. The lights were so antiquated in these high school auditoriums where they were holding these shows. I mean, they were like these incandescent bulbs. They were terrible. And, and they somehow managed to get the light to work. I don't know how they did it. So, I mean, now we have LED. I mean, the lighting should be beautiful. They should get a photographer. Some of the photographers who shoot the show are very knowledgeable. Just sit down with the photographers with their camera and say, guys, tell me when the lighting is perfect on this place on this line where these guys are going to stand. You have to do it with a photographer, because these guys know, because they had to set their cameras properly. When they say this is it, that's what you keep there for the at least for the prejudging. If you want to make a big show at night, no one cares, because they're really not judging that much at night. It's mostly the prejudging. Yeah. And that's what we want to see. And we want to and the competitors want the good pictures from the prejudging. They want to be able to see what they look like on a neutral background against the other guys with good lighting. And I mean, that's the name of the game. See, the problem, Chris, is nowadays you can take the shittiest lit pictures and you can just put a filter on them on Instagram and you can change them to whatever you want. That's why I look at guys that look terrible on stage and I look at their Instagram. I'm like, holy shit, this is not the same person. But you can do it. And that's fine. Instagram is like, it's like Hollywood. I mean, look, you think half the singers nowadays can actually sing? They have auto enhancements. They can make anyone sound good. You and I can do a duet and probably sound great if they used all their little machinery that they got to.
Well, maybe not great. Maybe adequate. I wouldn't say great.
I guarantee you, if anyone out there is a music producer and they want to do the experiment, Chris and I will sing a duet. You guys can doctor it up. We'll sound like fucking Simon and Garfunkel when they're done with us, Chris.
Did they play that? They didn't play the Olympia music, did they?
No, they didn't play the Joe Weider Mr. Olympia music that he stole from. I don't even know who he stole it from, but Mr. Olympia. I kind of like it. It's corny, but it's good,
Yeah, it has the pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, didn't Joe commission someone to write that song or something like that?
I don't know what the backstory. John Hansen would know the backstory in detail. What he paid, who the original guy was.
I got to find out who wrote the lyrics. Mr. Olympia. Da, 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 da.
Joe Weider's Olympia.
Joe Weider's Olympia.
There weren't many lyrics. It was Olympia, Olympia, Joe Weider's Olympia, Olympia, Joe Weider's Olympia.
Yeah, I don't even know, but I don't even. Who is singing it?
Words.
Wouldn't you love to know who was singing it? It could have been Bob Paris for all we know. Singing that. Right? Because he had that. He was, he had that very deep voice. Very deep voice.
Yeah, he's the cousin voice to Chickarillo.
Yeah, the funny thing is, you would never expect coming out of Bob's mouth. You would never expect to hear that voice, right?
Yeah.
You would expect like a high-pitched voice coming out of his mouth, but that wasn't the way it is. All right, I wanted to tell a little backstory because a lot of people ask me, I think we're going on our 14th year of Heavy Muscle Radio.
Yeah, we are.
And it's actually really the 17th year that I've been doing a bodybuilding, weekly podcast. It started with Muscle Development. We had something called No Bull Radio there for 3 years, from 06, 07, and 8. And then obviously John and I left MD and we started RxMuscle. But back in 06, Chris, and I don't even know if you remember this or if it was in your wheelhouse, Blackman wanted to start a podcast because Dan Solomon had that bodybuilding.com pro bodybuilding weekly podcast, and he was like, we gotta beat them. We gotta beat, that was Blackman's whole thing. We gotta beat them. And I had just started the website with him. He had hired me to do full-time work over there. I want you to start muscledevelopment.com. They didn't have a website. And so I'd been doing my own personal website, and he liked what I was doing, and he knew I wasn't competing anymore. So he hired me. And then John and I were going to do this radio show, but we didn't even know what we were doing. No, no one did it. It's not a normal thing to sit and chat like we do now on a podcast, because it wasn't something that people did. So and it wasn't easy to do it back then. So we had to contact this company called Voice America. Now, Voice America was a place where you would call into this call center with a telephone, and they'd have all your intros, and they'd run the intros, and they would tell you when to go to commercial and stuff like that. And it was it was a complicated procedure. It was expensive. It was like $250 per episode Blackman paid. So it was like $1,000 a month, which, for Blackman at the time was cheap, because he was making a lot of money in advertising. It wasn't a big deal, but I mean, that's how complicated it was to run a radio show. So no one had one. Dan had one, we had one. That was it. And so Blackman, we didn't know who was going to be the right combination of people. So there was a guy by the name of Larry Pepe, who's a really nice guy. He's from New York. He was a lawyer, friends with Rick Collins. And Larry was doing some kind of radio show on his own. Larry Pepe show. I think it was on like bodybuilding.com too. He would interview people. He was like Larry was a super nice guy. He was like the Larry King of of bodybuilding radio. He would ask everyone like the easiest questions, and everyone was his friend and stuff like that. And it was like a feel good interview. So Blackman's like, let's get Larry Pepe, and he could be like the host with you and John. So I'm like, all right. I talked to Larry. Larry and I got along really well. But we didn't really know the direction, Chris, of where the radio show is going. So we wanted to be like, sensationalistic. We wanted to be like a little crazy, because we didn't know, we wanted to do something different. So we used to have, we would get like Valentino on as like a guest, and Larry was appalled by Valentino's vulgarity and all the things that he would talk about on this radio show. So the dynamic was terrible, and Larry was always like, he didn't want to do it, and he was always complaining to me. I'm like, I said, Larry, I said, I really like you. You're a really good guy, and I understand, but Blackman wants to make this thing sensationalistic, and I know you don't want to do that. So we kind of parted ways amicably, and so then it became John Romano, me, and Valentino doing the Noble radio thing. And Valentino didn't watch any shows, so he didn't know what was going on, Chris. So it was impossible to even do a show wrap up with him because he didn't know what was going on. It was just it was like me combining the After Hours podcast with Heavy Muscle Radio. It just doesn't work. So eventually it got whittled down to John and I were doing that show. And then obviously, when we left, we continued over here at RxMuscle, and then you and I started when John left RxMuscle for a little bit. But it's crazy how the continuity of this, this radio show has continued year after year after year, and it's evolved to the point now it's obviously not just a podcast. It's a radio or audio podcast. It's actually a video. We do video, and we do a lot of live shows. And so I just like to look back. We talk about the new year and what we look forward to in the future and stuff like that. And, I think I'm pretty proud that you and I have perfected this show to the point where people take our opinion as being extremely valid in terms of contest analysis, coverage, our insights into the industry. And, there's a certain level of respect. Chris, you walk into a cleaners, in Maine, and the guy knows who you are from the radio show. I'm sure on vacation, people stop you, on Collins Avenue there and say, "Oh, I love the radio show." That isn't it? It's a pretty crazy phenomenon when you think about it.
Dave, I'll share this with people because it was the funniest RX moment of all time. Because I've had just too many people, too many weird circumstances. I told you about Thanksgiving weekend. I was visiting my sister, and I went into the donut shop. And the guy, and I wanted to get the donuts, and the guy commented on Milos and insulin with the donuts. And there was probably 4 people in the store. The guy who probably pays attention to bodybuilding, maybe occasionally this show, and he was 400 pounds. And but the funniest of all time, I never told the story. I told it to you. I was at a track meet, and there was a little old guy, and I rolled down my window, and he was stuttering, and he was trying to say that he listens to the radio show.
Right.
He couldn't get it out, so I didn't know. It took him a while to get it out, but I called you immediately and said it was the, not making fun of him funny. It's just the idea. You know what I mean? That
All walks of life, Chris.
he was excited. He was excited to say like, "Oh, I watched you on that show," and
Right.
And he was having trouble getting it out. He kind of like sang it out at the end. And the craziest thing is he had to be in the 70s.
That's
so maybe
crazy.
the training for, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people have
Yeah.
been training for years and years, and they scour the internet.
Right.
And here we are.
It's amazing. I mean, I go to my son's soccer games and my daughter's soccer games, and people come up to me all the time and they're like, "Oh, I love that show. I love your show. Watch your show. Watch your show." So,
well, you got to say which one, like the interview show or Heavy Muscle Radio.
they watch the whole channel. They love the channel. Uh-oh, I think I lost Chris. I knew that was bound to happen. South Beach. Yeah, people just watch the whole channel, and everyone has a different thing they like. One person likes to Ask Dave. One person likes the Heavy Muscle Radio Show. One person is like there's plenty of fanatics for After Hours. I mean, they love Jimmy the Bull and Valentino and Romano and all those people on that show. They like my debate. Some people love. I got people who love Muscle in the Morning. They just want an update. They don't, want to go anyplace else. They get their update from Muscle in the Morning every morning, 5 days a week. So that makes me feel good, when I know that there are other people out there who are enjoying the programming that we're doing. And I want to tell another story. I was going to wait till Chris comes back, but maybe I'll just. Oh, here he comes.
You.
That was you, I think.
It was.
Turn your phone.
Technical difficulties. 14 years.
Hey, when you're on South Beach, you never know what could happen. I'm surprised you've lasted this long.
People will say, at 14 years in, Chris still doesn't have a good microphone and camera.
No. When you have families and you have kids, guys, if you don't have them right now, you have to squeeze things in. I texted my wife this morning. I said, I'm going to do the radio show early because Chris has got to fly out later. And she didn't see the text, but I saw that she texted me that in the middle of the show here. And she's like, "Oh, Shayla's sick. I got to take it to the urgent care." I'm like, "All right, just give me 20 minutes. You got to work your way in." And like Chris said, we're free, but we're really in jail still. So, that's just the way it goes.
When you have 3 or 4 kids, a week, like 2 seconds.
Yep.
I
wanted to bring up something else that's irking me today. And I have, I tell a lot of my clients and just regular people who listen to the show to go out and get blood work, right? Because there's no excuse for not knowing. So, I mean, if you have any kind of you want to check your thyroid gland, you want to check your, prostate, you want to check your heart, your liver, your kidney function, right? I mean, you're an idiot if you don't. It's so easy, right? I mean, you go to the doctor, they draw vial blood, and I give out, people contact me all the time, and I put the offer out still. If anyone asks, they want to know what blood work is a good thing to get checked, I'll send you a list of all the blood work you can tell your doctor to check for. So I sent one of my clients, very good client, the list, and he goes to his doctor, and his doctor writes in this, doctors write emails. Did you know that nowadays?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, doctors write. You don't even talk to people on the phone anymore. They'll send you an email, and this guy writes this email. I should probably read it. It's so fucked up. He writes, I don't want to mention the person's name. I noted your request for multiple lab studies. I presume these studies are being requested by your outside endocrinologist, Dave Palumbo, outside endocrinologist. Due to the complexity and the nature of these tests being ordered. Okay, I wasn't testing for cancer, Chris. I'm talking like the testosterone, PSA. Sure. Due to the complexity and nature of the test being ordered, I must request from you, Chris lost Chris again, to have your endocrinologist provide written documentation. I should wait till Chris comes back because he's going to want to hear this, how ridiculous this is. This is the problem with our men. Oh, here he is.
That's why. I missed it.
I know. I didn't. I stopped reading it because I want to. All right. Let me get back to my. Hold on. Due to the complexity and nature of the test being ordered, I must request from you to have your endocrinologist, Dave Palumbo, provide within written documentation that he is requesting these lab studies for you and the specific reasons. For example, the request for prostate PSA testing is highly unusual for a 31-year-old male. That is, prostate cancer risk is higher for white males aged 50 and higher. He's black. And African-American males aged 40 and higher. It would not be expected in a male younger than these stated ages. Keep losing Chris. All right, I'll give him a few seconds because this is important, because you know what? This shit goes on all the time. And these doctors then then something comes back bad, and then they're like, oh. Meanwhile, you got a person who's trying to be proactive and, prevent themselves from being caught by surprise by something like prostate cancer or prostate enlargement or anything like that. I mean, and then they, it's ridiculous. But I really want to rant to Chris. So let's hopefully Chris comes back. I've been dealing with doctors like this for years. And you know what? There are really good doctors out there that are very open-minded and who will do and test anything you ask them for. If you ask them for a cardiac CT scan, they're going to send you for one because they know that data is important. Okay. It's not like these doctors are being charged like, oh, I'm trying to save the insurance company's money because they're going to give me a kickback. That's not how it works. Here's Chris. All right. You're very volatile over there.
I know.
Okay. Please, he's like, please contact your endocrinologist to notify him that we need this documentation as soon as possible. Till then, I am not able to complete all the lab order requests. All right. This is the problem, Chris, with our medical system. This doctor is acting as though he's saving the insurance company money and he's going to get a kickback on the other end, which is not the case. If I want a cardiac CT scan, okay, to see if my heart have blockages, I don't want my doctor telling me, oh, you're too young to have coronary artery disease. Well, you know what? Dallas McCarver did it 26 and he died because of it. Okay? Who the fuck is this guy to say to this guy, what if this guy has prostate cancer or has an enlarged prostate and that's why he's getting it checked? Or what if it runs in his family? What if his grandfather and his father died of prostate cancer and he wants to get it checked? Worse.
The guy
he's got to go to an endocrinologist now to get a letter of referral for a PSA test. It requires a checkbox on a blood panel. It's literally a checkbox, Chris, on the panel. Matter of fact, this kid could have probably checked it himself, but now everything's done digitally, so they don't even give you a piece of paper anymore for the blood work that you go in for.
The big picture is that you don't have genuine access to your own health care. You know what I mean? Someone has to, if I want to bring my car, I know it's a stretch, but if I want to bring my car and I hear noises in it and the brakes seem like they're not really sometimes working, if I want to bring it into a machine shop, a repair shop, I can bring it in. But if you think you might have some health ailments or possibly doing something that can cause some health issues, and you want to go see a professional, they say you can't come see us.
Right. We lost Chris again. I mean, think about it. What if you live in like an area where there's high radioactivity or something like that, or you went to an area and you're worried about your thyroid gland because that's where radioactivity accumulates, and that you can get thyroid cancer from that. And this guy's like, well, you're too young. You're not going to have any thyroid problems. I mean, it's ludicrous, but this is our medical system. And it's not just our medical system. It's all over the place. These doctors think that they know more than everyone. They're going to quote studies. And this guy could have had a father who had prostate cancer. And the guy's just worried, that he doesn't want to, have the same thing happen to him. And he wants to just check his numbers. It's not like he's ordering a $5,000 diagnostic test for this guy. That's why I tell you guys, go get a cardiac CT scan. Pay yourself if the doctor won't write the script for it. It's $59. You call your radiology place up. You say, I want to schedule an appointment for a cardiac CT calcium score. You say, I'm not doing it through my insurance. You pay out of your pocket. It's worth it. Get a calcium score. Then if it comes back high, then the doctor has to order the cardiac CT scan with contrast, which is the one that that's a little higher end, that's going to give you a better look at your coronary vessels. There you're back. You're having some problems over there, huh? No one wants. Are your kids like cutting the Wi-Fi off because they don't want you on? They want you to end.
I think Blackman's in the building next door.
No, Chris, this is a real problem with our medical system. That there are doctors out there who think that they know more than everyone else, and they're going to quote statistics to us. And you know what the truth is? Most of these guys don't even know how to read blood work. I can't tell you how many things that I've caught on blood work that doctors just missed. And then you know what they do? They get carried away with like liver enzymes. They get a 300-pound bodybuilder, okay, who comes back with liver enzymes that are 5 times the normal level. And they're like, oh, you could be in liver failure. I got news for you. If you were in liver failure, they wouldn't be 5 times the value because the liver doesn't have that much liver enzyme in them, okay? What's going on, obviously, it's from working out. You would think these doctors at this point in time, I mean, it's pretty well established out there that enzyme levels, the same metabolic enzymes are found in the liver as they're found in the skeletal muscle, okay? If a big, huge, freaky guy comes in who tells you he works out 5 days a week, okay, and you can tell how big he is, and he obviously is breaking down a lot of muscle, why would you get all in arms about a high CPK level and liver enzyme? It's physiologically impossible that it came from the liver, okay? So it must have come from someplace else. Guess what? The guy is training 5 days a week and breaking it for 2 hours a day. I mean, it's moronic that these guys are so inept and so unattuned to what's going on. You got to go out there when you look for a doctor. You got to find someone who understands bodybuilders, people who work out in general. I get news for you: marathon runners and long distance runners, their liver enzymes are through the roof too, because all they do is break down muscle all day long by running.
Yeah.
So
that's Dave, that's a good point. I've never really thought of is to the extent that like a triathlete, what their blood work may look like.
Horrendous. You know why?
Trauma.
Because they're putting their body through a very traumatic type of training, And the thing about bodybuilders, why we have the highest levels, is because we have the most muscle. Remember, the enzyme levels that you detect, okay, which they call liver enzymes, or the CPK, which is creatine phosphokinase enzymes. That's the enzyme that converts creatine into creatine phosphate inside muscle cells, including heart cells, liver cells, all that stuff. Those levels are going to be much higher in the more muscle mass you have. And that's consistent. So, right, more muscle, higher enzyme levels, breaking down more muscle, releasing more. You have a skinny marathon runner. Yes, he's breaking down a lot of muscle, but he doesn't have that much muscle to begin with. So it's not like you're going to see crazy high enzyme levels. You'll see high, but you won't see crazy high. You'll see the bigger the guy, the crazier the levels. And when I was 315 pounds, my levels were super high. Nowadays, they're a little high because from working out, but I don't have as much muscle. I guarantee you big rant. I've seen a lot of bodybuilders go to the doctor, and then they call them up and say, you got to get to the emergency room. And they're like, why? They're like, you're in this is the day they love to do this one. Rhabdomyolysis, which is a breakdown of extreme amounts of muscle mass, usually due to some kind of stress or virus or something like that, or some kind of malady that you have. But we could actually make it look like we have that in bodybuilding because we break down so much muscle tissue that all those enzymes are going to be through the roof. Okay, so most bodybuilders don't have rhabdo. Okay, they're just maybe they haven't taken a day off in 2 weeks, and they're just breaking down too much muscle mass, and so they're feeling a little fatigued. So these doctors don't know how to deal with elite athletes. That's why when I pick my doctors, like my cardiologist, I pick a guy my guy is a bodybuilder. Both when the guy I had in New York and Brian Arseman, who I have here in Cape Coral, Fort Myers area, because he understands what my values are going to be. He's not getting carried away if something's a little off that he knows is due to me training or something like that. And so, and I'm not even big anymore. So imagine what some of these big guys. That's why these guys don't want to go to the doctor, Chris, because they don't want to hear the speech from the doctor, because the doctors don't understand. That's why they send me their blood work. I get blood work. I shouldn't be reading as much blood work as I am, but these guys are scared because the doctors, get them scared. Now, I've had guys who told me, sent me blood work and said, the doctor said that, these are pretty good. What do you think? And meanwhile, their creatinine level is like 1.6, which is, it's not off the charts, but it's definitely too high, at that point. And I said, you got to get that creatinine. And they're like, the doctor didn't even tell me that. They don't even know what to get upset about. In a bodybuilder, okay, who's 250, okay, who's, you know, got a lot of muscle on him, who's on probably a blood pressure med, okay, and who has high creatinine, that's not a good sign. That could mean your kidneys are under stress. Usually I tell these guys to get a cystatin C test done, which is very definitive for kidney health. And if that's normal, usually you're okay. If it's not, then you want to, you know, ease up on the protein intake and, you know, take some of the kidney stuff I sell at DavePalumbo.com and give your kidneys a break for a month or two. And that usually will help the kidneys regenerate. The kidneys will regenerate. It's just when you don't ever give them a break, eventually it's cumulative damage over years and years and years. So, but it's sad to know that the medical system in our country just is unaware of how to treat athletes. And guys, you got to take it upon yourself. And I said when we lost you before, you know, cardiac CT scan or cardiac CT calcium score is really important to get. You don't have to get a prescription for that. Just call your radiology place and you make an appointment. It's $59. You can take the test. And then if that comes back high, then you could then the doctor has to write a prescription for the cardiac CT with contrast, which is the one that really will tell you if you have any blockages. So I want to put it out there because you know what happens, Chris? New Year's comes and then people drop dead usually the first month, right? January, February, everyone goes back to the gym. They overdo it, and then we have a lot of deaths because people didn't even know, oh, I didn't know I had a blockage. I didn't know I had this. I didn't know I had that. And so I don't want to see any deaths in our industry any more than we've already had. I mean, there's so many deaths from 2022 that I can't even remember them all. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
Can you name 5 guys that died?
I couldn't. You know, not off the top of my head, but you know, if you gave me the list of 50, 30, or 20, yeah. Forgot about him.
I mean, Jerry Ward was a great guy. You know, we lost him in 2022. He was doing the live webcast at the Masters Now or North American or Masters Nationals, one of those shows, and he didn't wake up. I mean, and there was a lot of stories like that in 2022. Hopefully, 2023 we won't have the same thing. I want this to be a healthy year. You know, I think I've told you this. I don't know if I told you this before. For some reason, every year that ends in 2, I've always had like something dramatic change in my life or happened in my life. From 92 to 1990, starting with 82. 82 is when my mother got cancer. 92 was when I left medical school.
2002.
02 is that's when I got divorced and I started like kind of, you know, that was a big change in my life too.
2012.
12 was when I tore my quad in India.
Yeah.
I told you that
22.
story. You know, when I went to a store in India, I was with Aaron Singerman, believe it or not. We were in India and we were doing a tour and we went to the store. We had this driver driving us around and we went to the store and we were like buying, you know, stuff. I think I bought a suit there and I wanted to get a picture for the wall. And I said, I like that picture. He's like, oh, that's the god of, I forget what I thought it was the god of death. You know, I said, I really like that picture. I forget it wasn't Vishnu. I forget the Shiva or something like that. And he's like, it's not really the god of death. He said, it's the god of change. He goes, if you're ready for change in your life, then that's then you can hang that. So of course, like a dummy, I bought it. And an hour later, I tore my quad in the gym there. And my life changed dramatically after that. I would have never met my wife if it wasn't for that, because she was a physical therapist and she was calling me and stuff like that. So.
Something good came out of it. Something great came out of it. You would have had
22. I have my foot fusion. So
yeah,
but I know a lot of people told me on 2 years also they have a lot of change happens. I don't know if there's anything to that. Have you noticed any variances on the 2 years?
No, because I get bad things on a yearly basis. So
what year did you get cancer? Did you get the melanoma?
2001.
When was it cured?
2.
Huh? Was it cured in 02?
Yeah.
All right, there you go. See? Change. 02. That's a big change. That's pretty close. Maybe I got something.
Yep.
So my point is that if you guys had a tough 02, and I know a lot of people out there had I saw Colin Van Moger was posting on he's back on Instagram. It looks like he cleaned himself up, and he said, yeah, I had a very bad 02. It was the worst year of my life. I almost died, He fell out, he jumped out that window, and all the crazy stuff that was going on with him. So he's back. The good thing is, after a terrible year like an 02, like where a lot of change happens in your life, usually the following year is a good year. So 03 could be a good year. Hopefully I don't die in my sleep. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously,
don't jinx it.
It's been a tough last 2 years with COVID and everything that's happened, to our society. I mean, hopefully 03 will be something that people will be able to look at as, you know what, this was the year that good things started to happen in my life. More opportunities presented themselves. And what do you got, a parrot out there, Chris?
Yeah. A little bird just landed up there. That's what I'm looking. He's jumping from side to side.
I can hear him.
He's interfering with the audio.
It's not. Maybe that's the bird that's delivering the soulful message and confirming my soulful message.
Delivering something. He's singing a song of peace.
There you go. That expression, the little birdie whispered in my ear. Well,
yeah.
Little birdie's whispering in your ear. Good things, Chris, to come. Now, you're going to be heading back to Maine. How come you're not staying longer? What, the kids got to go back to school?
Kids have school. We have to make a pit stop to see my father-in-law in Atlanta. Short trip. It was just a very short trip.
My kids have this whole next week off too. Can you believe it? 2.5 weeks they gave them off.
Too much. I
said, they had a hurricane here. They missed 3 weeks of school. I'm like, you would think they'd try to make it up on the holiday, but no, we're not taking away their holidays. So we sent them to the gymnastics camp. We got the kids. They're exhausted.
I'll take them, sign them up for a course, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So when they come in, they're tired.
What I said to my wife when I first met her, before we started having kids, I said, every year after school would end, I would go to camp. She's like, what's camp? My wife didn't even know what camp was. I said, that's something that the Jewish and Italian people send their kids to up in New York. I said, it's like the continuation of school so that they can still have a life. She's like, oh, we never went to school. We didn't have the money, but I said, listen to me. My parents said it was the thing that saved them. I said, well, let's go to camp. And I said it was expensive, but they spent the money anyway because they said it was money well spent. So my wife was like against it at first. Now we got a vacation. They're going to camp. We're gymnastics camp, fighting camp, school camp, whatever we got to do. Yeah. They're going somewhere. During the week.
Keep them busy and socialized.
That's right. You know what? It's not fair to them anyway to stay. They don't have anything to do at home, and it's not like the old days where, you stay home, you get on your bicycle and you ride it down the block to your friend's house, and you disappear the whole day. No one does that anymore.
No one. My mother let me out of the house.
You can't trust people. It's crazy. And the funny thing is that back then there was no way for your parents to communicate with you. There was no cell phones. There was no beepers. There was nothing. So when you left the house, you were gone. You were gone until you came back, and no one worried about it. Unless you didn't come home at before dark. Nowadays, you could text people and call them, and you could even put what the new thing is. You ever see these little Apple Air tags they have? Yeah. My wife tags everything. So phones, keychains. If she loses anything, she just gets right on her cell phone and she can beep, 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 beep. She'll find exactly where it is. It's ingenious. All the remote controls in the house are all tagged because my kids will lose those things in 3 seconds. They disappear. I've lost more remotes in my house. I don't even know where they are. You think people are worried about losing socks in the dryer? I lose way more remote controls than we lose socks. So no more. We have more Apple Air tagged now. Great society we live in. Pretty soon, people will be tagging each other. They'll be sticking a little thing under your skin. You'll have a little tag on you.
Dave, I'll leave you with this. We're in Publix. Me and my 17-year-old yesterday was packed. And he asked, I noticed it too. We saw multiple people with ankle bracelets, and he wanted to know what it was. I said, welcome to Miami. People walking around in shorts and an ankle bracelet.
I remember when Craig Tynes went to jail for the first time and he got out. Oh no, actually, I think the first time he didn't go to jail. They gave him an ankle bracelet, and he had a guest pose at a show, and he had the ankle bracelet on, which is weird because I had an ankle bracelet. I had an ankle bracelet for 5 months. But if I had to go to a show, they had to take it off me. So I had to go all the way down to probation. They had to take it off. And then they wouldn't, the days that it was off, they didn't count those days. So I had to make those days up. And then I'd have to go back and they put it back on me. So, yeah.
What did he take it off?
No, he didn't take it off.
Did Craig Titus do? Take it?
No, he didn't take it. He was trying to figure out how to take it off so that no one would. You can't. Once you cut that band, it sends a signal to them, so they know you took it off. So there's no way you're getting that thing off. And a matter of fact, when you have it on, usually, if you leave the radius of it works off. I don't know if it still does. It was working off an analog phone line. You had to have. So if you left the radius of the detector in your house, like I would go to take a shower sometimes. And the walls of the shower would block the signal. And they'd be like, "Where were you for the last 3 minutes?" I'm like, because they call your house immediately. I'm like, I was taking a shower. I'm like, where did I go for 3 minutes? You know?
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. True story. Yeah. So Martha Stewart, when she was on house arrest, she had the same sentence I did. 5 months in, 5 months house arrest. Her property was so big, Chris, in Connecticut, there where she lived, that if she would walk to like the boathouse or whatever, the thing would go off because it wasn't in the range of the machine. So,
well, she has a big house up in Maine, and it's so out there that they couldn't track her out there.
Probably.
It's so rural.
Yeah.
So when people complain about my signal in Maine, when I'm in Maine for Heavy Muscle Radio, just remember when she was up in Maine in her house, they couldn't track her.
Oh, maybe was it Maine? I thought she lived in Connecticut. Was it Maine that she lived in?
She has it. She still has it. She has a crazy summer home in Maine.
Well, you know what the funny thing is? The best thing that happened to Martha Stewart was she went to jail because it gave her street credibility. Like people thought she was like this stuck up little prissy, pain in the ass. And once she went to jail, she became like America's favorite person after that. Like everyone loves her after that because she sucked it up and she did her jail time. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, she started hanging out with Snoop Dogg after that. They became best friends.
Snoop's like, "You're all right. You did some time, man. You broke your cherry." Oh my God, it's funny, but people respect that. You go to jail, people think you're tough, unless you somehow get out early, from doing things you shouldn't be doing. Yeah. All right, let's wrap this thing up. I know you got to go. I got to go. We got stuff to do. I got to take the kids to get a haircut, although now we might be going to the urgent care instead to get some ear infection medication. But I want to just give you this one message. I want to leave you guys with this message. Remember, don't live in the past. We have a new year coming up. I'm not big for New Year's resolutions because I think that you should always be trying to resolve yourself to do something better and better yourself. But 2023, blank slate. It's unwritten. Don't live in the past and think, well, this is what happened last year or last month or yesterday. Every day is a new day for you guys. And you know what? You can change your history by changing the way you're thinking about what you're going to do. And that goes for bodybuilding. It goes for life. It goes for your relationships. It goes for your relationship with money. You don't have to be a victim of what you did yesterday. Okay, make a new future for yourself. And if those wise words touch people, I hope it changes your lives, because you know what? Do what you love. I always say this: if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and you'll have a very successful future. Chris, final words?
I think you got to bring back the quote of the week, Dave, because you used to have that to close out the show.
Well, I just made up my own quote of the week.
I know, but you can lift some.
There you go. We'll bring back the quote of the week. We'll see. People seem to like that. I got to find some good quotes. But
well, they're everywhere.
Yeah,
they're everywhere these days.
Yeah, I got to tell you, some people are. It's funny how some of the people that seem the dumbest have the best quotes, right? Yogi Berra always had how many people quote all his crazy euphemisms that he used to say?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, who else comes to mind besides Yogi Berra?
I love the quote. It's deja vu all over again. Right?
Yeah.
Is that what he said?
Nobody goes to that restaurant anymore. It's too crowded.
Yeah.
That's another one of his.
You know, I was eating lunch the other day. I went to my wife dropped me at the bagel store because I had to pick the dogs up in the groomer, and I took an Uber back. She had to go work. And there's a guy by the name of Sharky who he's 94 years old. Ironically, his grandson did all the windows in our house and all the doors, but that's not how I met him. I used to see him at the bagel store. He's there every day. He's like my father would have been best friends with this guy. Sharky owned like a swingers club in Manhattan back in the day. Frank Sinatra used to come in there. He's got pictures on the wall with Sinatra and all this stuff. And his best friend was Joe Pepitone, who was a New York Yankee, very, very popular New York Yankee back in the day. And so Joe Pepitone gave him his car where it says New York Yankees on the license plate, and that's the car. Drives his Cadillac around.
No one except Italians who my father's and your father's age know who Joe Pepitone is. I know who he is. But go ahead.
I know, but
because Italians talked about him like Babe Ruth.
He was the hero, right? He was the Italian hero of the New York Yankees, and he was telling me stories about back in the day, Pepitone and all the places, all the because Sinatra, I guess was Frank Sinatra got kicked out of Hollywood for a little bit. I don't even know what caused it, but but he had a lot of like Italian friends. You know what I mean? The Italian friends who got him back into Hollywood and got him some movie roles. So he was very loyal to those guys. And Sharky said these guys all would come into his club, and then they always go out to eat together, and everyone just was super respectful. But it was like the Wild West back then. You didn't mess with these made guys. And the stories he was telling me, man, I before I knew it, I'm like, holy shit, 2 hours passed. I was sitting in the bagel store with him. I'm like, you know what? My father should have been down here. If he would have been down here like 5-10 years earlier, he would have been in the bagel store with all these old guys telling stories. Because my father was from the Bronx. He knew the New York Yankees. He would go to Yankee Stadium, live down the street from it. Sharky was in the dressing room. He would go back there. He told me a story about. Remember George Steinbrenner, who owned the Yankees?
Oh yeah.
Steinbrenner had an office, and then they had in the corporate area on top of Yankee Stadium where Steinbrenner had an office, but there was also a long hallway where I guess the press room was there. And they used to Pepitone would cut through Steinbrenner's office because it would cut off the whole long walk because Steinbrenner had a special, room going into the press room. And they would, and one day Sharky and Pepitone were cutting through Steinbrenner's office, and Steinbrenner just happened to be in there. And Steinbrenner was like a real tyrant, evidently, but he's like, and he knew him. He's like, Sharky, what are you doing cutting through my office? He goes, I got a bad leg. I just got surgery on my leg. I can't walk. He's all right, fine. And all I was thinking about was the scene from Seinfeld. Remember when George Costanza used to work he would work for Steinbrenner, and they'd have the scenes up there in the Yankee Stadium. Yeah, I said, man, my father would love these stories.
I didn't know Steinbrenner owned the Yankees that long.
Since like the 50s, 60s. Yeah, he owned it for a really long time. I didn't know. Yeah, a really long time. But the good old days. So I got to hang out with the old Yentas in the bagel store for 2 hours. You know what? I can definitely see why these guys all want to hang out with each other and tell old stories from the old days. It reminds me. I said, Sharky, the problem is that you outlived everyone. He's like, I know. He goes, how much longer do you think I got to go? I said, Sharky, you made it to 94. Chances are you'll probably make it to 100. There's nothing wrong with you. He's like, I got aches and pains and here and there. I said, but there's nothing wrong with you.
Had a birthday. Tell him your friend who just had a birthday is 56 and's got aches and pains.
I said that to him. I said, Sharky, I got a lot of aches and pains. I'm only 54. What does that mean? He goes, they just get worse.
They do get worse. That's why people like him come to Florida.
I said to Lee Priest, I said, look, he pulled his pec muscle walking his dogs the other day. I said, see, that's what happens when you turn 50. I said, things like that start happening. I said, but just make sure that your wife now, when you get to a certain age where you start getting a little demented, I said, have her send you down to Florida. I said, because Chris, Romano, Jimmy, the Bull, and you and me, have to be put into the same old age home. So at least we can have fucking lunch, dinner, and breakfast together and tell stories about the old days and then not remember what we said the next day and then repeat the same stories every day. I said, we got to make sure that we're all in the same place when we get to that point where no one wants to deal with us anymore.
Is
very
Gaspari
important.
here? Is Gaspari in Florida?
Yeah, he is actually. Yeah. Gaspari can join us too. Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll tell the same Lee Haney stories every fucking day for the next every single day of the year.
They're exciting to rehear.
Yeah, and we won't even remember them the next day. So we'll be like, "Holy shit, what a great story, Richie!"
Tell us the Haney. Yeah, he can embellish him a little bit more the next time.
Like, did I ever tell you the story about when I went to train with Lee Haney? We're like, no, you didn't tell us that story, and he'll tell us again. Valentino, we got to bring Valentino to. He'll tell us the same story about the Joe Matarazzi and how he took a stripper to his prom when he was 18 years old. I've heard that story 400 times already on the radio show, on the after hours show, and I never get sick of it. And I remember it. I said, tell it again, Greg. Oh, I told the story.
The audience
the audience has heard it 400
but the audience
times.
might have been changing audience, so they've never heard it before. New to someone.
That's right. Anyway, I hope we entertained you today. Have a great New Year, guys. And as always, we'll be back next week. And remember, with Heavy Muscle Radio,
the truth hurts.
Sure does. See you next week.